thank you for joining us to celebrate the first ever livery company to have an all-female rowing squad here at WCIT. I'm Rita Bologna, President of the Women's Rowing Team, and a very warm welcome to you all, our Master, Barge Master and Clerk, from myself and the team. We have a super evening planned for you, so do pour yourself a nice drink and sit back and enjoy. Let's start the evening off. I'm going to explain what's going to happen. So we're going to be talking about the formation of the women's rowing team. You'll get to meet the team. You'll hear about the history of women's rowing, TTRA races, practices, and events. We're also delighted to be joined by our very special guest, Patricia Carswell. She's from Girl on the River. Patricia will be sharing her truly inspirational story with us tonight. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about the formation of the team. So how did it all begin? Well, it is clear that livery barges are an embedded and very visible part of the history of the livery movement. But I must confess that I did not detect many female rowers on the grand barges in some of the historical photography that I have seen. So maybe it's time for a change. The start of 2020 proved to be an exciting time for the CETO panel here at WCIT. In February last year, at the CETO panel lecture, I was honoured to formally announce the formation of the Women's Rowing Squad at our beautiful livery hall. There are around 14 livery companies that have their own cutters. We are not just lucky enough to have our own cutter, which is named CETO, by the way, but we're also very lucky to have our own barge master, John Gavin. John and the men's team have been rowing for 15 years and have taken part in many races. They do a brilliant job and are extremely professional, so it's been a rather tough act to follow. John and I spoke about the possibility of recruiting a ladies' team, and I was honoured when I was elected to become president. I thought to myself, this is a challenge, but it is one that I'm more than happy to take on. Very quickly, after I had made a few announcements, a number of WCIT female members came forward and showed real interest. I started to increase these numbers by connecting via LinkedIn with certain members and journeymen whom I thought could be potential rowers. This process has taken around 12 months, but I was so pleased with the enthusiasm and positive responses that I received from many of our ladies. To show leadership by example, and in taking on my own role seriously, I became a member of the British Rowing Organisation and Greenwich Yacht Club. This has enabled us to enhance our relationship through WCIT and both organisations moving forward. We have recruited a good number of rowers, so far to include Captain Claire Verger and Deputy Captain Suzanne Harkins. We are lucky enough to also have attracted some of our younger journeymen, whom I can actually see some of them tonight. There will be no doubt bringing some extra youth and energy to the team. All of the rowers have amazing potential, and I can confidently say that they will certainly be the best they can. It's a pleasure to watch them on the river and give them total support. I see a bright future for these ladies and very much look forward to the times when we can all get back on the water and challenge our CETO male companions. This is the first ever women's livery rowing squad, so I'm certain that you'll all agree that we should all be extremely proud. But now I'm sure you're all intrigued to hear more about our very special rowing squad. So we are now going to run a short video, and this will give you a chance to meet the team.
Hi, I'm Emma Steenson, Court Liveryman at WCIT. I love being out on the water, and I've often thought about joining a rowing team, so I'm really excited to be part of the first livery ladies rowing team. I don't have any rowing experience, so I know this is going to be a challenge, but it's one I'm really looking forward to.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Harkins, Deputy Captain of the WCIT Women's Rowing Squad. And when I was informed that there was going to be formation of the first ever ladies rowing squad for a livery company, I immediately said yes, that I wanted to participate. And the first reason I wanted to participate really was because of this. I absolutely love the river. I love being on the river. I come from a swimming background. I love being in the water, in this case on top of the water, and really what better way to explore London than in a rowboat in the Thames. So we have processions and races in various parts of the river, all the way from Hampton Court to the Tower of London, boats in Greenwich, all of the bridges in between. And it's just a great way to spend summer days. So it will be summer days. And another key element is reason why I was inspired to join was really the opportunity to to row with other women and other women in the livery company. So we can train together. It's a great opportunity to get to know one another and participate in the first ever women's races. So thank you.
Hello, just to let you know why I would like to be on the ladies rowing team. I strive a challenge. It's something very new. It's very exciting to be on the river together with the other members of the team, and it helps focuses the mind. But very much look forward to restarting our sessions again very soon.
Hello, my name is Claire, and it is a privilege to introduce myself to you as the WCIT Ladies Rowing Squad Captain. We formed as a group last year, 2020, so obviously we've had lockdown, we've not had much opportunity to get onto the river, but we're really excited about being able to do so. Very grateful to our barge master, John Gavin, and also our president, Rita Bologna, for really supporting us, and it's a great opportunity for us to join the CITO panel as well. We're excited about adding value to WCIT and indeed the livery, as we are the first all-female rowing squad within the livery, which is really exciting. Thank you for your interest and hope that you can support us at an event coming soon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isla Kennedy and I joined the WCIT women's rowing team because I've done a bit of rowing before, but not a lot, and I thought it'd be a great chance to get to know some other people within the WCIT doing something that I've enjoyed, and it's been great to do it on the river in a different sort of boat to what I'm used to, and to meet lots of new people and get involved. I think it's also great to be on the women's team because I'm quite a passionate feminist, and it's great to show that anyone can get involved with rowing and the wider livery movement, and whatever their background.
Hello, this is Julia George, liveryman with WCIT, having joined the company about 10 years ago. In that time, I've been active with a couple of panels and committees and now work on ESG and social value. I know from personal experience how the company supports and encourages its members with our own initiatives in exemplifying our 4 pillars. I don't row, I sail instead, but I've been inspired to join this group of amazing women and support them whenever I can, as well as having a lot of fun. The CITO Ladies Rowing Squad embodies everything that's good about WCIT and is a first for our company. I'm really looking forward to cheering them on whenever I can, and I know that their energy and drive will attract many more young female technologists to join us. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Danielle Green. I'm a liveryman with WCIT and I've been a member of the company for the last 3 years. I'm here to lend my support to the CITO Ladies Rowing Squad. It's such a fantastic initiative with a bunch of really enthusiastic and committed women, and I think really does illustrate why I joined the company in the first place. I'm looking forward to cheering on the squad's achievements on the river and obviously being part of the camaraderie and fellowship as part of this group off the river as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all the ladies for taking part in that video and representing themselves in an extremely articulate way. I'm so proud of you all. So thank you again. So now we've got our captain of the team, Claire Verger, who's going to be presenting the history of women's rowing. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Rita. So I'm going to just go through with you all a brief PowerPoint this afternoon, stroke evening. Just to start off by saying it's a delight to be able to do so and have this opportunity, and it's great to see so many of you who've taken the time to join us, so thank you very much. I am also more than happy to share this PowerPoint following this evening for anybody who may be interested, because I won't go through everything in minutiae. Firstly, then, to start off, modern rowing. It began as a competitive sport back in the early 17th century and was very much reliant on professional watermen who provided ferry and taxi services across the Thames. Races were held, known as regattas, and they were very often associated with prizes and awards generated by the London Guilds, and in particular the livery companies as well. The oldest surviving race, and you can see a picture there and portrait by Thomas Rowlandson of that, is the Doggett's Coat and Badge. This was first contested in 1715 and is still a key annual event today on the Thames. Amateur competitions began at the end of the 18th century with lots of boat clubs, establishments at Oxford and Cambridge colleges, and indeed these races attracted huge crowds. And clearly the Thames and all activities on the Thames really were the focal point, and in particular using the traditional cutter for the establishment of modern rowing. The first women's rowing club was established in 1896 by Dr. Frederick Furnivall. It was originally called the Hammersmith Sculling Club for Girls, and later became the Furnivall Sculling Club for Girls and Men in 1901, when men were admitted to the club. He set this up very much as around getting women into what was a man's world of river sport at that time. So looking very briefly at the timeline, in 1892, the World Rowing Federation was established. This very much at that time oversaw all activities for men, and therefore we saw the first organised European Rowing Championships, followed in 1896 with the first Olympics for male competition. Didn't go ahead due to the weather, but it did go ahead in 1900. In 1962, World Rowing Championships was introduced, and in 2008, rowing for men was added to the Paralympic Games. The women's timeline is very different. We didn't really pick up until 1951, when there was the first test event for international women's rowing, and this was held at the European Rowing Championships. It was established to see whether or not women's rowing should formally become part of the European Rowing Championships. And there were 4 countries that were involved, with 4 boat classes. Men had 7, and a race distance of 1,000 metres, and this competed with men who had race lengths of 2,000 metres. There was a second test event in 1952, a third test event in 1953 with some additional countries joining, and also in 1953 was a congress held as part of the European Championships to agree or not whether women's rowing should become an official part of the European Championships. It was agreed, and this went ahead in 1954, along with the introduction of a 5th boat class for women, which was the Coxed Quad Scull. 20 years later, women's rowing was added to the World Rowing Championships, and 2 years later, we competed in our first Olympics in terms of rowing, and that was in Canada. In 1984, women's rowing at World Championship level extended to 2,000 metres, and that was therefore in line with men's events. And at the Olympics in 1988, this again was extended to 2,000 metres and in line with men's events. So we got there in the end. However, what we also had to contend with in terms of women was sex testing at the Olympics. All women who had competed in the Olympics had to take what was known as DNA gender tests or undergo femininity control. That was how it's officially described. Whilst it was also agreed the process itself was very discreet and dignified, this caused quite a lot of fear and apprehension amongst females competing at this level. And the photo there on the right is the 1976 female rowing squad. 2 people in particular who competed in those Olympics comment as follows. Pauline Bird remembers it being really worried about it, and she commented, as visually appearing to be a woman did not mean that you would pass the test. And on the right-hand side, you can see a photo there of Lynn. My apologies, going back to that slide. There we go. She commented, Beryl and I always said that if training made us look like men, we would stop because we didn't want to lose our femininity. So I was really traumatized by Penny, who is the manager of the team, convincing me that I hadn't passed my sex test. She goes on to say, because I was skinny and I had that boyish type frame, I was absolutely certain that I must have failed my test and I was a man. I remember thinking, will I still be a PE teacher? Will I be sued for being in the changing rooms with the girls? And even now I remember the terrible fear of wondering if I would still be married. So that was in 1976. But we moved on with our women's rowing, and it very much became about quality coaching, quality strategy, and funding to support that. In 1996, 3 members of the then GB team, Miriam Batten, Ali Gill, and Anna Marie Stapleton, approached and met with David Tanner, who was recently promoted at that time as the International Rowing Manager. They stressed the need for an independent coach for the female rowing team, the need to have a coach that would commit to a 4-year term and see them through the Olympics, and indeed to have a more permanent base for the rowing squad's training. Notes that they took from that meeting read as follows. David Tanner could not guarantee that the appointment of a women's chief coach would be his top priority, but emphasised it was a priority. Much was dependent on funding. If there was funding for 3 full-time coaches, one would be for women, but if there was only funding for 2, one would not necessarily be for women. In terms of strategy, the Leander Club had a strategy of its own, also linked to funding. The Leander Club was founded in 1818. It's one of the oldest rowing clubs in the world. In 1997, it voted to accept women for the first time in its 79-year history. This was a huge step forward for women rowing. However, it wasn't without some controversy. Former captain Duncan Crockford at that time says that he remembers they made the choice to admit women simply because they felt it was the right thing to do. However, Chris Dodd, who was a historian and wrote about women rowing, wrote in the Regatta magazine, by admitting women as members, Leander complies with the Sports Council's requirement to modernise the club's constitution to qualify for the £1.5 million grant from the Sports Lottery Fund towards the club's £2.3 million development scheme. In a statement also issued after the meeting, the club said Leander will continue to pursue its gold model winning policy of focusing its competitive efforts on men's heavyweight rowing. That said, women were admitted, and Beryl Crockford was the first woman to have full membership in 1998, having competed at the Olympics for the GB team. But it was linked to funding, and we know 1997 is widely remembered in British elite sport when funding went into supporting sports that needed additional resourcing. Rowing was one of them. And for the ladies, it meant they got their request. They had a chief coach in Mike Spracken. They had a base that was a permanent training base for them. They had facilities that were relatively simple, but they had a commitment and funding to support them. And we started to reach success. In that year, we picked up several medals at the Women's European Rowing Championships, picking up the 4s gold, where Miriam Batten, Gillian Lindsay also won the silver in the double sculls as well. We went on in 2000 at the Sydney Olympics to pick up the silver, and absolute commentary has to be given to Deborah Kirsty Flood, a noteworthy rower, picking up silver medals, but also becoming the first female Leander's Club captain in 2012, and she was again re-elected in 2013. So huge, great steps forward. In terms of where are we now? Well, we have the WCIT Women's Rowing Squad. And as our president has already articulated, we are the first all-female livery rowing squad. We were inaugurated last year. We're part of the CETO panel. I'm very grateful to our barge master, John Gavin, for all his support and encouragement and the opportunity to be part of that panel. And we're able to enjoy the benefits of having our own cutter, known as CETO after our motto, with its own full traditional Thames regalia for allow us to compete and participate in processional activities. We are really looking forward to adding value to WCIT and indeed building on the history of women's rowing, hence this small presentation to give insight into that tonight. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was of interest. What I am delighted to do now is to introduce Suzanne Harkins, our Deputy Captain of the Ladies Rowing Club at WCIT, who's going to talk to us about the events, practices and races that we have as a squad.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm Suzanne Harkins, Deputy Captain, and what I'm going to do today is really just give a quick overview of what we do together as a squad and as a panel. So, of course, our main activity is rowing, but the panel is recently been becoming more and more involved in activities around health and well-being more generally. So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to save some word count today. I'm going to share a presentation as well. Okay, well, the first thing to note is that with, this has been mentioned before, but with the formation of the Women's Rowing Squad, there's a new influx of women on the CITO panel, and we've been becoming involved in all of the activities. One of which is a well-established lecture series. In January 2020, for example, there was a great lecture held in the hall on the topic of the river and deliveries, about the important role the river and rowing had on the commercial success of the City of London. We have a couple of lectures coming up this year, a joint lecture with between the CITO panel and the Climate Change Working Group on the impact of climate change on the Thames, also a government panel joint initiative on democracy, and we're very excited about a new lecture topic called Women and the Water. So please do keep an eye out for those dates. It's been a difficult time to schedule, I think as everybody knows, but we are hoping to have them in the hall this year. They're a great event with a reception afterwards, so keep an eye out for those dates. We also have an association with HMS Collingwood. This is a special association. It's our president, along with the barge master and a dedicated team, has been building this affiliation with HMS Collingwood, which is the Royal Navy's largest training establishment. They have virtual meetings, organizing events with some prizes, and organizing other activities. Keep an eye out for those, and we are very proud to be a part of enhancing this relationship. We've also kept ourselves busy with some social events. As you can see here, the Friday Fizz, for example. 2020 was a bit of a challenging year to launch the new squad. However, we did manage to meet several times with actually rowing. We met at the Molesey Rowing Club in March, organized by our deputy barge master, facilitated by Guy Leopard. And as well, we were able to get onto the river in Greenwich in October. But in the autumn and winter months, we had virtual meetups. It's a concept that was thought up and organized by our president, called the Friday Fizz. We meet monthly, the first Friday of every month, over something fizzy to catch up on a Zoom, keep the momentum going, get updates on what's happening in the rowing community and with the WCIT rowing squad. So hopefully they'll be in person soon. They've been virtually so far, but soon it's time to meet again in person. We also have some other social events. For example, we're hoping to go to the Henley Royal Regatta as a team, hopefully in soon to be Team Blazers. And as well, there's a panel we'll be having a series of Thames Reach walks in different parts of the Thames. So keep an eye out for those dates as well later this summer. In terms of the rowing, we participate in a particular type of rowing. It's fixed seat or traditional rowing, so that's probably a little bit different that you may be familiar with seeing rowers on the river who have sliding seats. The boats are Thames Waterman cutters. They're fixed seats based on designs from the 1800s. They usually have 6 oars, and they're designed really for the particular conditions of the Thames, which makes them strong and safe for use. They are also adaptable for ceremonial events, and you'll see a picture of that on the next slide. And as mentioned, CITO is kept at the Greenwich Yacht Club. And here she is in her full regalia. You can see the canopy with the effigy of Mercury on it, the sideboards. In this picture, this is because it is the ceremonial livery decorations. We have 4 oars, with the crew in their tabards and their tricorns, and you see the cocks on the left. And the Thames Traditional Rowing Association is the main group who organizes events in the London area for the traditional rowing community. So the membership tends to be livery companies, other rowing clubs who have traditional rowing boats and involved in those events. In terms of the races, and there's different types of events, but in terms of the races, there's different categories. There's men's, mixed, and women's crews. So it's possible to participate in several different categories. There are other livery companies who have female crews, or female members, but not necessarily a permanent crew. But there are other clubs in the London area who have all-female crews. So there will be all-female teams to race against. For example, the Port of London Authority, the PLA, the Richmond Boat Club, Trinity Tide, and also a club called the Forget-Me-Nots. In terms of our practices, I think this is a beautiful picture. This is Greenwich Yacht Club on a very sunny day. Practices are held 1 to 2 times per month at high tide, organized by the barge master, and usually run from March until October. So here you can see, this is an October practice. Although we're bundled up in coats, it was actually very pleasant on the river. You see the sun shining there. It was a great day. But it's not just rowing. So as mentioned, our president has, to facilitate our access, has become a member of the Greenwich Yacht Club. All members must participate in compulsory volunteer duties. So here is our president completing her volunteer duty, along with the other members of the yacht club. And on to the races. So the calendar has quite a number of different races. They vary in character, in length, in different parts of the river. And this event is called the Port of London Challenge. You can see it's 4.5 miles. Now the sky is blue and this looks beautiful, but this is particularly known to be an unpredictable stretch of the river. Can be a little bit of a tough row because of the crosswinds. The Oxbridge Waterman's Challenge is another highlight on the calendar. This takes place on the great traditional boat race course from Putney to Mortlake. The Admiral of the Port is a 2.5 mile sprint going past Westminster Palace. And I have not been to it yet myself, but the rumor has it that there are particularly good refreshments at the end of this race. The Great River Race is not organized by the TTRA, although it is one of the highlights of the season. So this is a 21.6 miles, so this is quite a bit longer, and it runs from Greenwich to Richmond, so in the other direction of the river. It is the biggest and most prestigious event of its kind in Europe. As you can see, there are over 330 crews who are entered, 2,400 competitors. And I chose this slide because I think it highlights not just the camaraderie and the activity on the river itself with your team, but with 2,400 competitors. It's a day full of atmosphere, meeting people from all over the world in some cases, and with similar interests. And I think this really shows the atmosphere of sport. But it's not just races, so there's also processions that play a very important part of the rowing calendar amongst livery companies. So this is one of the highlights of the season. This is the Tudor Pull. It's a key event of the season. It's a 26-mile ceremonial event, which begins at Hampton Court. It was established based on the tradition, was established by Henry VIII of providing a gift to the warden of the Tower of London. So this is reenacted every year. Here you have Gloriana, which is the Queen's row barge. Gloriana begins at Hampton Court and is accompanied for 26 miles by a flotilla of cutters in their full regalia, all the way to finish at Tower Bridge with a ceremony. And the final procession I'll highlight is the Lord Mayor's flotilla. So this begins at Westminster Boating Base. It takes place on the day of the Lord Mayor show. So it's Gloriana, who you can see in this picture, again accompanied by a flotilla, carries the new Lord Mayor of London from the Westminster Boating Bridge at Pimlico, and drops, I had delivering him, but I put in a little note delivering him or her to the HMS President an hour later. And in terms of international events, this is one of the key highlights of the season. This is the Venice Logolunga. It's a particularly beloved event, non-competitive celebration of rowing. There are thousands of participants who gather at St. Marco to begin the event with singing. There's a 30-kilometer route around the canals and the historic sites of Venice, ending again at St. Marco. We are having discussions about attending this event. We were thinking about 2022, it could be 2023, but this, as you can see, is really a highlight of the international calendar. And finally, there's a new event on the calendar this year, which is WCIT's own big regatta. So this is being held On the 31st of July at Molesey Rowing Club, it's going to be a regatta for livery companies and other traditional rowing clubs in the area. It's going to be an afternoon of racing followed by a dinner social. And there's a lot of opportunities to get involved here. If you've always dreamed of being a commentator, there's starters, there's support crews, and there's lots of good ways to get involved in this event. So please do keep that in mind. So the date is July 31st. There are contingency plans in place. So this is a slightly difficult year, but I have been assured that this event is going to happen. So definitely keep it on your calendar for this year. So as you can see, there's a lot of different events, lots of variation, practices, processions, there's racing. And it's not just about the racing itself, it's also about good cheer and the support crews that are around it, the whole atmosphere. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your attention. And it is now time for me to introduce our special guest speaker. This is Patricia Carswell from Girl on the River. And we are absolutely delighted to have her here. She's going to share her story with you. So please join me in welcoming Patricia Carswell. Thank you.
Well, do you know, I'm so thrilled to be here. I've always been fascinated by the history of the River Thames. And as a rower, it's a real thrill to find out about a type of rowing that I've never experienced myself. I'm a little bit obsessed with Tudor history, so the kind of history of it is really exciting. And I have really enjoyed hearing your enthusiasm for this wonderful sport. Now, I have been rowing for about 11 years, and I have to say, when I took up the sport, it was pretty much the last sport that anyone in their right mind would have recommended for me. For a start, at a towering 5'3¼ don't forget the quarter, I am not really built for rowing. As you will probably know, it is a sport for giants, and I am certainly not one of those. On top of that, it's a very, very technical sport, and I'm sure all the ladies who've taken it up recently will vouch for that. It requires an awful lot of learning, and I have traditionally been incredibly bad at sport. I was the kid at school. I was the chubby ginger kid who was more at home in the library than on the sports team, on the sports field. I was always the last to be picked for teams, and I really identified as an unsporty person. And so I remained completely unfit for most of my adult life. On top of that, my medical history really militated against doing a strenuous sport of any sort. In 2000, I had what was known at the time as the millennium flu. And some of you might remember that there was a particularly virulent form of flu going around. And about a year later, I was diagnosed with post-viral fatigue, also known as ME, which put paid to a budding career as a barrister, but it also put paid to any thoughts that I might ever have had of doing strenuous activity. So for the next 10 years, I really did no exercise whatsoever. And when I hit the age of 40, I realized that it was kind of now or never. I really didn't want to go into middle age chronically unfit. And so I started working with a personal trainer and building up my fitness very, very gradually, from the point of having to lie down after I walked no more than 2 miles to being able to do a little bit of exercise here and there. But the problem was that I couldn't really find a sport that I enjoyed. I tried dabbling with everything. I did a little bit of Zumba. I tried tennis, which I was really bad at. I tried running, which I hated, and nothing was really lighting my fire. So it was really something that I was doing out of a sense of duty than anything else, until I discovered rowing. And it happened completely by chance. I was standing on the riverbank watching my teenage son, who was learning to row, and I happened to comment to one of the parents standing next to me that it looked like a lot of fun. And she said, oh, well, why don't you join the local rowing club? Now, of course, I just laughed at that for all the reasons. But the interesting thing was, she said, the one thing that you shouldn't be put off by is being in your 40s, which was really the first objection that I put to her, because she said, in fact, you'd probably be the baby of the squad. And it turned out that at my local rowing club, there were people rowing competitively in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s, though our 82-year-old was told to stop competing by his wife when he had a heart attack during a regatta, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, the fact was that we had all these amazing people, men and women, who were rowing socially and competitively at all ages. So I joined the rowing club and fell in love with the sport in a way that I could never have anticipated. Now, it wasn't all plain sailing. For all the reasons that I've given, I was really too small for it. And although that doesn't really matter at club level so much, it did mean that I had a few issues with my technique trying to compensate for my lack of height. My lack of ability was also an issue. I was sensationally bad at rowing. Certainly at the beginning. But the great thing about always having been bad at sport was that that didn't surprise me or trouble me in the slightest. I was used to being bad at sport. I expected to be bad at sport. And whereas there were lots of very sporty people who dropped off because they were shocked at not being able to pick it up straight away, I persevered. And boy, did I persevere. It took me 34 races to get my first win, which I think may be some kind of record. But I did get there, to the point that I'm now a certified indoor rowing instructor. I've competed at the World Masters Regatta, and whilst I'm never going to be a brilliant rower, I have certainly improved from the early days where I used to cry all the way home because I was so frustrated. My health has been an issue from time to time. I do suffer from the occasional relapse, and it's still difficult to gauge my energy levels. I don't have the same stamina that all of my crewmates have, but I absolutely love it. And the reason why I've stuck at it when I'm so fundamentally unsuited to it is really actually all the reasons that the ladies who spoke in the video mentioned. So the first is just that joy of being on the water. It is absolutely beautiful. No matter what the weather is, it's just wonderful. And I do believe that there's a certain kind of magic that happens on the water. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was lucky enough to have a medical team that supported me in rowing all the way through my treatment. So 8 weeks after my surgery, I was back on the river, and I was able to row a bit all the way through my chemo. But there was an amazing thing that happened during my chemo when I got onto the water. The moment that I pushed off from the bank, my side effects would vanish. My head would stop itching, my eyes would stop watering, all those little side effects that never went away would vanish. So I do think that there's something very, very special that happens out on the water. My technique has, as I've said, improved, but I really love that technical challenge. There's something really quite special when you are in middle age, of learning something new, of pushing outside your comfort zone, of being challenged and acquiring new skills. And interestingly, I heard an Olympian saying just this week that he still works. It was Johnny Searle who won in the 1990s. He won a gold medal at the Olympics, and he said he still works on his technique now. So it's a lifetime of work, and that, I find that really, really exciting. But at the risk of going all David Brent on you, the single thing that I love the most about rowing is the people. And rowers I have experienced are amongst the most infuriating, bloody-minded, awkward people that you will ever meet. But they are also the most loyal, the most fearless, the most funny, and just the most brilliant people that you will ever meet. Over the last 11 years, my rowing friends and I have seen each other through every kind of difficulty that you could imagine. Between us, we've been through illness, divorce, bereavement, financial worries, you name it. And we have all stuck together and supported each other. Now, if there's any of you there who is thinking of trying rowing, I would say just give it a go. Age is not a barrier. Lack of fitness is not a barrier. You will certainly become fit during rowing, but you don't have to be fit to start, and you will make friends for life. And it might just be the best thing that you've ever done. So please do give it a try and do ask any questions. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia. A truly inspirational story. And we look forward to inviting you to join the ladies on the river when allows.
I would love to do that.
So finally, I'm just going to finish now by talking to you a little bit about the future of the women's rowing squad. As you've heard, the women's rowing squad is now active and sees its future in playing a big role actually within the CITO panel. We'll be supporting our WCIT 4 pillars that the company's activities are based around. Perhaps this will bring more of a female dimension to the mix moving forward. So firstly, industry and commerce. The Master is looking to develop the company's links within the IT industry and the city, which in the main is ran by IT professionals. So in both cases, these include a growing proportion of professional women. Many ladies are taking part in outdoor sports. There are also a lot of women who were at rowing schools and universities. The women's rowing squad can be used to open further doors for ladies in the city. This will give them an opportunity to engage and build their relationship within our livery in a personal and participating way with other like-minded females. Many women see the livery movement being a male-dominated society, so we look forward to changing that perception. We hope to encourage women members from city IT organisations and build wider links with them to attract new female IT professionals into our company. Secondly, fellowship. This is at the heart of the livery and is also at the heart of the ladies rowing team within WCIT. It is a unique group that we have, which allows for women to have their own space to work together whilst being a part of the wider panel and of course the company. We are looking to extend the fellowship of the team into the commercial city, but also into other liveries where there are a large number of lady rowers in crews, such as the Mercers, the Tallow Chandlers and the Barbers Surgeons. In the future, we are looking to build these links and truly put WCIT at the centre of ladies livery rowing in the city. Thirdly, charity. Well, charity is of course very close to my own heart, as you all may well know, but it's also very close to the hearts of my team. We are planning as a panel a regular calendar of events to raise funds, not just for the operation of the cutter, but also to donate into the WCIT charity once the events become more established. For example, our Women in Water lecture, which is planned for September, is an example of such an event. Finally, education. As we grow as a team, we would like to attract female students at the schools that we have links with, such as Lillian Bayliss and Hammersmith Academy. We would like to do presentations and talks and even offer them the chance to get out onto the river. Clearly, we will have to plan this carefully to ensure that we meet all health and safety conditions, which the Ahoy Centre manage very well for young people. Over the next year or so, we'll explore opportunities of how the students can join us at Richmond also. Rowing in a crew on the river is an excellent way to build their confidence. The students will learn about teamwork as well as aspects of technology such as navigation, and they will also learn about the city, its tradition and connection with the river. So there are some really exciting times ahead. In the coming years, we're looking to make the ladies team an embedded part of the CITO panel and the livery to assist us with our goals of gender balance and diversity. We are all of course, looking to work together and looking to have the best rowing crew that leaves our competitors in our wake. So that just leaves me to say a huge thank you to the ladies in the team for your continued efforts and infectious enthusiasm. And may I just add that if anyone here is interested in joining our fabulous team, please do pop your email address into the chat box and myself, Claire, or Suzanne will be in touch. Final words are going to come from our wonderful master, Mark Holford. So closing words, I'm going to come across to you, Mark, for that. And once again, from myself as president of the first ever women's livery rowing squad, I'm absolutely delighted and so proud that you've all joined us tonight. So thank you. And I'm going to hand over to our master, Mark.
I've realized that I'm highly qualified to join you. First of all, I'm willing to become your coach, because a rather long time ago, I was the coach for my house team, because I went to a rowing boarding school, a quite well-known one. And I used to smoke behind the bushes while they went upstream and turned around and came back. So I'm highly qualified if you need someone. I do have a distinction, and I confirm about Matthew Pinsent because he was one of our patrons. I've probably organized the biggest on-land regatta ever to take place in the city. It was called the Big Row. We had 700 people on 40 rowing machines one evening in Spitalfields Market, and we raised £500,000 for an African charity. So if you want someone to organize a regatta, I'm also qualified for that. By the way, the company, I'm afraid, can't afford to finance Peloton rowing machines for you all, but although that would have been a good way for you all to practice, especially in lockdown. To be serious for a minute, I am very keen on the diversity point, and it is we are in the process of creating some strategic objectives, which we're going to publish in the summer, and one of those certainly surrounds diversity. And we are very keen on increasing the female and other diverse categories of memberships. And I would love you all to find my challenge to you is to find one female member each in the next 6 months, because that would be great. We have one piece of good news, that 40% of the new members this year have been female, which is fantastic. So, but we'd really like to drive that forward. Finally, just to thank you all, Melissa for being our Zoom meister. Rather strangely, my spell checker or what autocorrect changed your title rather than Zoom Meister to Zoo Sister, but I don't think that's quite right somehow. Claire, Suzanne, John, Rita, thank you all for organizing tonight and speaking tonight, and particularly Patricia for your inspirational speech. That was really kind. So thanks to everybody for coming. I agree, 35 turnout, that's excellent. Let's hope next time we will be able all to meet in person. So it's good night from me and good night from him.